Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi there, I'm Anita Alvarez. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go?
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at ntnm.org. We're big on community policing. caps24.org. There are over 1,000 shows available on YouTube right now, and for caps24.org. Sonny is the chairman of the District Advisory Committee of the 24th District. We'd like to welcome our new commander, Roberto Nieves. We'd like to wish the old commander, Thomas Waldera, well. He's now in charge of narcotics. Please send samples. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. In any event, in the history of Marty Levinsons, there are Marty Levinsons and there are Marty Levinsons. and you know what? There's been no shortage of famous people, intelligent people, beautiful people doing them. Matter of fact, if you saw at the very beginning of the show just now, you saw Marisa Buchheit, Miss Illinois, do an operatic version of Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, wearing her crown and her sash. You know, you saw Tracy Butler, star of Channel 7, doing it. And of course, far and away, the finest Marty Levinson in the history of Marty Levinson was performed by my next guest, the state's attorney of Cook County, Anita Alvarez. How you doing?
Oh, great to be here.
First of all, thank you. Always a pleasure. And I also want to welcome Dan Kirk and Sally Daly Hunt, you know, who are here, and it's always a pleasure to have them. And Dan's got a new title now.
Dan does have a new title. He is my first assistant. So he was my chief of staff, and now I promoted him to first assistant.
Very cool. And a good man for the job, no question about it.
He's great.
No, definitely. So, you know, we actually, I actually floated around at the last DAC meeting. I was thinking, you know, what can I do that's a little different? So, anyway, I just happened to mention that you were coming on the show, and I asked people for questions. So, as a matter of fact, you know, and by the way, you should know that most of the people who are here already know Anita Alvarez. I've had so many people telling me, oh, I met her at the Sox thing or met her there. And everybody talks about what a nice person she is. And you know what? She really is. You know, like, you wouldn't believe it. But, yeah, there's really a nice person in elected office who actually tries to do well. Now, you know what? We'll get into, well, now I remembered what I was going to look at. But, okay. So, anyway, we'll get to the questions first.
Okay.
So anyway, a guy, Cesar Escoredo, speaking of whom, also knows you, also thinks you're a terrific person, and you'll be actually eating at his restaurant, Taste of Peru.
Oh, okay.
Which actually has 5 different awards from the Michelin Guide. It's up on Clark Street. And in any event, he didn't actually formulate the question, but he brought up something. I later let the commander and Sergeant Sisk, you know, decide what you guys get a question each. So Sergeant Sisk's question was, since you can openly publish sex offenders, like there's a sex offender registry.
Sure.
If somebody gets caught, arrested for prostitution, their pictures can be published. Why? How come nobody's publishing pictures of gang members?
You know, I think there are pictures of gang members that are being published, maybe not always identified as gang members, but what I've seen just over the years is that, back when I was in the gang unit trying cases, when I was in the trenches, they never, the newspaper, the media, wouldn't even name the gang. And now the gangs are being named. And many times you have the offender's picture there in the body of the story, the name of the gang is in there. I think when they publish pictures of, for example, someone who's soliciting a prostitute, the Johns that are arrested in some of our operations, I think part of the reason is the embarrassment factor, and you're not going to get that when you're talking about gangbangers, because with the gangbangers, they're kind of proud that they're gangbangers and they're gang members, and they like to be identified. So I don't think there's really any purpose. But although many times they are, by the body of the story that the picture is in, you'll figure out what gang they're in. The community members know who the gang members are. The police department knows who the gangs, and that's the most important thing, is that the police officers know who the gang members are. So, that I've just seen a change where they are identified, maybe not to the extent of what you just, illustrated, but I think they are. But I think what's important is that the officers know who they are.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you know what? I'm not going to elaborate on that too much. I could talk about, I could probably talk the next 28 minutes, about, the laws that hamper you as well as the police, and it's unbelievable. I actually got called for jury duty.
Oh, did you?
And, I was actually hoping for a criminal case. I served on a jury about 4 years ago. It was just a misdemeanor theft.
Uh-huh.
But this time it was actually it was a civil case. And baby born the wrong way, and baby was born damaged in the first place. Mm-hmm. Baby's still alive, but they don't like what the doctors did, so they're suing for mega millions. And a very nice judge, Judge Panther was his name, and he did a very nice job of explaining everything and all the rest of it. And I was actually being interviewed for the jury and all the rest of it, and my hair just kept getting raised by the defense. I'm not the biggest. I frankly think the Trial Lawyers Association went a little too far, but I wasn't going to say anything in open court. But I have written stories about this, and I told the judge that I really didn't feel comfortable talking about this in open court, but I think he should know for the openness that I have written about it. And when he called me into his chambers, later, unfortunately around 4:30, so it took quite a while, what is it you were going to say? And I said, well, when it comes to the Trial Lawyers Association, he says, you're excused. That was a case I really didn't want.
Yeah, but I bet you would have, most of my experience with jurors is that they, everybody tries to get themselves off. They don't want to get picked. They're nervous. They don't want to be there. But then once they do get picked, they sit through the trial, and we talk to them after the fact. It's what a change, a complete turnaround. They ask questions. You can hear them, getting along in the back and laughing. And when you talk to them after the fact, they even have more questions. What about this and what about that? And it's great to see, because when you're picking a jury and you see their faces, they're more, it's like that. I don't really want to be here, until they get picked and they realize how important the case is. And when they go through the deliberation process, you can see how much they actually enjoyed it. And at least that's my experience.
I was on a one-day trial, and I actually not only liked it, but even when I was in Judge Panther's court, and I knew I didn't want any part of that case, I still felt like, a certain civic responsibility to be honest.
Absolutely.
The whole time. But I also knew when they were asking questions like, do you read this paper, read that paper, and they mentioned the Washington Times. And, like I was talking to you, I think, off the year earlier, I read everybody. So, I'll read the Washington Times, I'll read, The Nation.
Right.
And believe me, if you put those two in the same room, there would be no survivors. So, I try to read it, but when they said Washington Times, I knew I was off right away. But if they had asked if I read The Nation, I would have raised my hand also. Yeah. So, whatever. But I wouldn't have really liked a criminal trial because, number one, for the show, considering all the judges and considering interviewing you and Tom Dart and other people, and I wish the police department would let me have more victims. Kudos to new Commander Buslick, who's the one active police officer who's actually willing to come on and talk, and thank you so much. We appreciate that. But, it would have been very educational for me to have been involved in a criminal trial. That I would have liked.
Absolutely.
And that I would have relished. But you know what? To assign like $50 million in damages, $10 million in damages,
right.
I don't, that's not, I'd feel very uncomfortable doing
that.
Right.
It's a whole different world on the civil side. And you're talking about money, talking about damages, and much different than what you see on the criminal side.
Yeah, see, I could see going against heartless hospitals and things like that, or the corporations that run hospitals. The doctors are another story, though. Most doctors really do care. And there's a human element.
There is a human element.
Like, for instance, when we've talked, when I've mentioned to you stuff, there's 35,000 cases, I think you say that, you go through in a given year. If you really think that I agree with you on every single one, I don't.
Exactly.
There's no way. It's not human.
It's human.
and then I was trying to figure out, how come you get so much criticism from certain people about certain things compared to other offices?
Right.
Because some of the other some county officers are better than others, okay, and some are not so good. So then I started realizing, how does anybody really know? You know, and don't take this the wrong way, Dorothy, but if Dorothy Brown's doing a good job or a bad job. The way I did is I'll talk to people in your office. I'll talk to people who are judges to see if she's doing the things that are necessary to keep the wheels in motion.
Sure.
You know, I can do the same with other offices. Other people don't have that option. But if somebody sees something you did, I mean, that's much more black and white. Like, for instance, in that case with the police officer, you know, the people criticized you for charging wrong because the person, you know, they wanted the person nailed to the cross one way or another.
Right.
By the same token, the police complaint from the other side
Was
that you never should have charged the person at all. And my rule of thumb with Jewish Chicago is if I'm not criticized by the left and by the right, I'm not doing my job. So, you know, if both...
Yeah, I mean, the job of state's attorney, and this is what I signed up for, right, when I ran and I won, and is, you know, no matter what decision you make, someone's going to be unhappy, someone's going to be happy. That's just the way it is, and no matter what decision you make. And you know, I always say I make my decisions based on the facts, the evidence, and the law, and that's controlling. You know, that's what I'm looking at. You know, what are the facts? What's my evidence? Can I prove the elements of this crime? Because as a prosecutor, it's unethical for you to bring charges if you know you can't prove every element of that offense. So, you know, I feel very strongly that, you know, that is how we make decisions in this office, and I know that I'm not going to please everyone. And, you know, I think you know, and you know this, there's always Monday morning quarterbacking going on, right?
Yeah.
There's always those critics who knew better and, you know, second guessing, right? No matter what your decision is. But, you know, I said this to my staff. I said, well, you know, there's always Monday morning quarterback, but you know what? You know, they're not on the field, okay? They're not on the field making that decision to run that ball or throw that ball. I'm on the field, okay?
Right.
I'm on the field, and I'm in the middle of the game. And, you know, I mean, we've, you know, on every case, that case and others, I mean, you know, we did a thorough investigation, and I charged what I felt I could prove. Again, you know, it wasn't the result that we wanted, and it upset many people, rightfully so. But and you just pointed out, but I was criticized from both sides.
Yeah, I like that.
Right.
It's a good thing. Definitely a good thing. And also, I think I should mention that you're not personally in charge of all 35,000 cases.
No, I'm not.
So, because I've actually talked to you about cases where it's like, you told me you didn't know about it until
Sure.
the papers hit.
Right.
So, you know, one of the other subjects, speaking of drugs, and once again, you know, why is it that I know all these law enforcement officers and we're decriminalizing marijuana and nobody gets me any drugs anymore? They never did. Okay. But in any event, you know what? There's Lou Lang is our state representative, has been one of the big champions behind medical marijuana.
Yes.
And, I mean, the Silversteins are basically his toadies in part. So it surprised me that Deborah Silverstein's actually, the state granted a permit at 6501 Northwestern,
Okay.
which is right next to Warren Park, just north of Devon Bank,
Right.
for a medical marijuana facility, a facility that's going to be guarded 24 hours a day by off-duty officers, either from the Sheriff's Department or Chicago Police Department or whatever. I think the Sheriff's Department more so. It's going to be a very well-lit area. There'll be videotapes all over the place. And our alderman, and I'm not trying to get you involved with knocking the alderman, I do enough of that myself. So, but you know, she's against the idea. She's afraid of the idea of that being right next to the park. Now, I would think that if a Walgreens or a CVS was next door, the drugs at a Walgreens or CVS are a whole lot worse than the drugs you've got at the medical marijuana clinic. It may not have the same reputation, but I mean, all those stuff people shoot in their arms in its purest form are available there, and you could just, you know, nobody would object to that. So this is something the state already approved. The state already approved the facility. And, I mean, is there any... Oh, and by the way, I hate to say it, but the guy who, the owner of the clinic, also tells me what a nice person you are. Seriously. You went to one of the Sox outings. He's a big Sox fan.
Yeah, I am a big Sox fan, and we're not doing too well. This season's not starting out too well for
But
us.
you know what?
But hopefully it's early.
We're still talking, you still got plenty of time, and you've got some, the pitching and Abreu.
Right.
And,
We got
I
some
think
good
this guy
people.
Rodon, you look at that, you look at his.
I think he's going to be good. I
he's
think
a
so.
monster.
I think he's going to be good. But on the clinic, I don't know all the specifics of licensing the clinic. I'll be honest, so I don't know all the specifics of that. However, it is a licensed facility. It is something that the Illinois passed the law. So it will be controlled. It will be monitored. I think, I can understand the concerns on both sides. People object to bars, right? Going in certain neighborhoods or going in certain locations. So I can kind of understand that. But this is something that it's not going to be just anybody coming off the street going in there and buying. This is somebody who, it's going to be controlled. As people have to have a prescription to go in there, to get the marijuana.
You've also got to be licensed, registered with the state,
Exactly.
give your fingerprints. And by the way, I actually do qualify, and I've never been fingerprinted in my life. But you know what? The truth of the matter is, this would have been great 45 years ago. Where was it then?
But I think it's going to be well controlled and secured. And I don't believe they're open 24/7.
No, not at all.
So I think it's something, but I think all communities are going to have to get used to this now with the changing of the law, and we're going to just have to see, once it's up and running, if there are problems.
Hopefully not. And you're not exactly talking about. You really have to have a serious disease.
Absolutely. Right.
So, I know in California, I had a friend of mine moved to California, and she wrote me how great it was. She told the doctor she had trouble sleeping at night, and they gave her a prescription for medical marijuana. They're not talking about this here.
Right.
I mean, you got a transplant, you got Crohn's. You're in chemo. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about.
Right, absolutely.
And those aren't likely, I guess Granny could be a pusher, but I hope not. So let me get to the last police question, and then it's your free range for the rest of the show. Okay, so the other one is, this is from Commander Nieves, who we wish a lot of luck to in his new job. He wanted to know how come people sentenced, who get sentences for guns, are serving such a small percentage of their sentence.
And that is a good question, and it's something that I've been trying to change in these last couple of years, and that is to strengthen our gun laws. I really do believe that we need to strengthen our gun laws. As our gun laws exist right now, if you're caught with an illegal gun, we're not talking about someone who with the FOID card and concealed carry. We're talking about illegal guns. The bottom sentence on a UUW, unlawful use of a weapon, is 1 year. Well, 1 year doesn't translate to 1 year. 1 year turns out to be 3 or 4 months at the most. So people are going in and coming out quickly. We have tried to raise those minimums, unfortunately, unsuccessfully down in Springfield, but it's something that I'm going to continue to try to push because I think it's important. And, when you look at other jurisdictions, and I'm sure you've heard the superintendent talk about that Chicago removes more illegal guns off the streets than New York and Los Angeles, and that is true. But the other thing, when you look at other jurisdictions, particularly New York, is that historically, they have had stronger gun laws than us, historically. So, out there, you're looking at a minimum of 3 as opposed to 1. It makes a difference.
Yeah, when that wide receiver shot himself in New York, he got 3 years.
Absolutely. But it does make a difference for, when we talked earlier about gangbangers, when you have gang members on the street caught with a gun, they go in for 2 months to 3 months. They don't really care much. They come right back out, and guess what they're doing? They're right back doing what they were doing before. So, maybe if they were a little more deterred by the fact that, hey, I'm going to be in custody or in jail for 3 years, then maybe they'll think twice about grabbing that gun. But we need to strengthen our gun laws. He's got a very good point by asking that question.
One of the things I actually mentioned to you once, which actually you said was an idea you guys were discussing, which will get me in saddle with the NRA, is the idea of serial numbers on bullets.
Right. And there has been, and it never seems to go anywhere, and that is, being able to track the guns. It's easier now to track cars than it is weapons.
Wow. Okay, so you know what? Let's talk about. We took a lot of time doing this, and I could probably spend another 4 hours talking about this. And you should know how much fun we had and how long we talked before the season started. But what kind of programs are you doing these days, and what kind of cool things are you coming up with?
Well, we've got all kinds of cool things coming up, and that is, I made an announcement several weeks ago about a new policy that I have on low-level drug cases. And, this is something that, we've been looking at for probably 18 months, and that is, we looked at our deferred prosecution programs, which I started just several years ago, and that is, on those programs, those are targeting first-time offenders with a nonviolent case and giving them a second chance. And that's basically what our deferred prosecution does. But the focus really is first-time offenders, nonviolent offense. And we've had tremendous success. And now we actually have data, we have numbers that we can look at and see how successful we've been with those diversion programs. So looking at that, we decided, let's look at the drugs. Let's look at what we're doing here in Illinois, and particularly Cook County, when it comes to our drug policies and how we handle cases that come into the system. So I had my staff, I had everybody get together and say, let's look at this. Let's come up with a very comprehensive plan. Because the other thing, I'm part of several groups that of other prosecutors, major city prosecutors. So I meet regularly with the DA from Brooklyn, from Manhattan, from Boston, Portland, Oregon, Dallas, all over the country. And we discuss these things, and we discuss, what you're doing in your jurisdiction, what I might be able to steal from you that'll work with us, and vice versa. And so we've had some great dialogues. And what I took from those meetings with the major city prosecutors is that everybody is doing something different. Every jurisdiction is doing what I would say is not doing traditional prosecution when it comes to the low-level drug cases and marijuana cases. Everybody's doing something different. Now, obviously, Denver because they legalized it, and now Washington State, so things are different out there. But, Boston is treating these cases differently. Portland, Oregon is treating these cases differently. He's creating what I would say are legal fiction, so I don't want to do that. But, so we came up with what we believe is a good plan, and that is, now we're looking at, particularly when it comes to marijuana, misdemeanor marijuana. Anything under 30 grams, the police are writing tickets for. Anyway, that's what they're getting. Chicago police, they're writing tickets. Some municipalities are writing tickets. Some people are traditionally arresting. Everybody's a little bit different. But what we decided to do on those misdemeanor marijuana cases is anything under 30 grams. If you have less than 3 tickets for that offense, then we're not going to prosecute it. We're just going to dismiss those. If you have more than 3 tickets or arrests for that, then what we're going to do is divert you into our traditional drug school program. Because when you look at some of these low-level drug offenders, they are users, okay? We're not talking about the big drug dealers. We're talking about the people who are users. They will get caught what really is a personal amount, a user amount. They get shuffled into the system, and then they come back, and they come back, and they come back, and they never get any help. So what are we doing? We got lots of cases on the call. Last year, on the felony level, on possession of controlled substance cases, we had 10,000 cases with that low-level drug offense. That's a lot, 10,000 cases. So what we've decided is on the misdemeanor side, we're anything under 30. That's how we're going to treat it. On the felony side, we're going to take those low-level drug offenses, which would include the marijuana on the felony side, but also heroin and cocaine, and get these people into some alternative program. And the focus or the plan, the hope is to get them into treatment, so we don't see them keep coming back. And we felt this is a well thought out, comprehensive program. And I know there were some people were questioning, well, where are you going to get the money, to treat these people? Where is this going to come from? We did our research. We believe that there's reimbursements that are available through the Affordable Care Act as well as Medicaid. And so that's what we're going to focus on. And the day I made my announcement saying that this is going to be our new policy, by the time I got back to my desk, and I'm not exaggerating, I had emails from social service providers saying, we're here, what do you need from us? we would like to be a part of it. We think there are people out there we can help. So that's probably been my major announcement in the last couple of weeks, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing if we can get help to some people, and keep them from coming back into the system. We're all better for it, If we do that, when we're talking about the lower level drug cases, then we can save our resources for the violent crime, because that's where we should be focusing, on the violent crime. And unfortunately, and you know this, Avi, from your work here in the community, we see a lot. We see a lot. We see a lot of the shootings. We see a lot. And so if we can kind of ease it up with the drug cases and focus and put our resources into the violent crime, I think that's a better way to go.
No, absolutely. Given the fact that we have the highest prison population of any nation in the world, and such a high, I think something like 2% of the American people can be found, or 1 to 2%, whatever. It's a ridiculously high amount. And given the resources that go toward it, and so much of it is drugs, and so much of it is driven by drugs.
Right.
People who are stealing this, that, and the other thing. I'll tell you the story another time, but short version. When I was fully in the graphics business, because you better do something besides the newspaper to make some money. There was a new guy who at the print shop, and I always like to get friendly with the new guys because I know I'm going to have them working overtime, and I want them to do it with a smile on their face. So he was really grateful for the job and all the rest of it, and he says to me, so I thought I heard, let me take you out for a shot and a Coke. I said, that's great. We'll sit at the bar, we'll have a couple of drinks, we'll have a good time. The next thing I realized, he didn't say a shot and a Coke. He meant a shot of Coke. And I was sitting in a shooting den for the next 2.5 hours, turning down the generous offers of various women to listening to the war stories for the day.
Wow.
And it was quite an experience. But we'll save that for another time because you get one more subject here.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we talked a little bit about the violent crime. And again, I believe we need to strengthen our gun laws, and that's something we're working on. I don't think there's going to be action on it this session in Springfield, but we're going to continue to focus on that. The other thing I think I'd like to mention is we talked about it once before, I think, on the show, and that is my human trafficking unit.
That's big time stuff.
It is. We've done some tremendous stuff with our human trafficking, and we've been recognized nationally. I was invited back in February to be part of a group called Human Rights First, and I was the only local prosecutor to be invited because of what we're doing here in Chicago. And I'm proud to say that what we've been doing, focusing on what happens here locally with our own kids. We're not talking about people being brought over from another country. That happens, but Chicago ranks 3 on the national hotline for human trafficking, and there are kids who are born and raised right here who are being forced into the sex trade. And so that's kind of what we've been focusing on. We developed a way to handle these cases, which has now become known as the Chicago approach. So I'm very proud of that because my assistants have been training prosecutors throughout the nation about, number one, how to put the task force together and how to develop cases in the manner that we've been developing them. So the Chicago approach is I'm very proud of, and it's something I think we can all be proud of, because we all know that there's a lot of negativity sometimes when the word Chicago gets thrown out there, but this is something I think we can be very proud of, and the fact that we've been able to help so many victims, young girls and boys too, that are being abused sexually here.
I can't tell you how important this is. I'd love to go on and tell people not to patronize the prostitutes. I was thinking about you last night during Chicago Fire, by the way, because that's the subject they had on.
Oh, okay.
So, but in any event, I want to thank you very much, Anita Alvarez.
Thanks, Howard.
And I want to thank her entire, well, not her entire staff, but Dan Kirk, first assistant, and Sally Daly Hunt, PR person. And I can't be, it's too early to really endorse because you don't know what crime she might commit over the next few months. I can't imagine not voting and solidly endorsing her in the coming election. And hey, Tony Preckwinkle, you really should give some serious thought to it, because not just me, but a lot of other people are just going to think about you based on your initials. if you don't back her. So in any event, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Thank you, Sonny Hirsch. Take care. Be well. Bye-bye.
You're cracking me up.